Currently, TDS has a lot of early game tower options, some obtained for a few thousand coins, some costing tens of thousands of coins, and even some obtained for completely free. In this video, I'll go over the 10 best early game towers and give them a rating of 0 to 10 red top hats, and at the end, decide which is the best. Just to be clear, I'll be ranking these towers purely based on how they perform in the early game. However, if they are useful in the mid to late game, I'll give them some extra points, but that won't be the primary focus. I will be looking at their DPS, cost efficiency, special abilities, consistency, and how they perform in multiple modes. But please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I am aiming for 2,500 subscribers and would appreciate your support. Starting off, there's the shotgunner. It costs $300 to place with 4 DPS while having a cost efficiency of $75 per DPS. It has very short range, so you're gonna have to be careful when placing this tower. I'd advise getting it in corners. This tower is really consistent when spammed because it can hit up to 3 enemies per shot. It's great against weaker enemies and crowds. I'd suggest spamming level 0 before upgrading, because as you upgrade this tower the cost efficiency gets worse, but it does get hidden detection on level 2. I managed to perfectly defend on Fallen with this tower until I leaked a 16 HP Fallen Squire. It also performs well on special game modes, however it might struggle on the mini bosses. However, if your goal is to speedrun and you've got defense for the bosses, then I'd recommend this tower. But with that being said, this tower is really good for a beginner tower, so I'm giving it 7 out of 10 red top hats. It's just great value for what it is and is useful for coin grinding. Next up, there's the Ace Pilot. It costs $450 to place with 6 DPS while having a cost efficiency of $71 per DPS. It flies in circles and doesn't stop, so be careful where you place this tower. However, you're able to change the direction it flies, so you should take advantage of this for more damage. Spamming the Ace Pilot is best for the early game. The damage dealt will be more consistent, but keep in mind it takes up a lot of space. I'd suggest spamming level 2 because the passive bomb ability, which helps a bit with crowd control while dealing extra damage. If you don't spam this tower, you're most likely going to leak quite a bit. The Ace Pilot does get hidden detection on level 4 for $6,100, which is quite expensive, but it does give other towers around it hidden detection too. When I tried this tower, I managed to perfectly defend until I leaked a 36 HP Fallen Squire. This tower is good on Pizza Party too, however it is most useful for the early game of hardcore for enemies such as balloons. But with that being said, I think this tower is pretty decent. It does get replaced easily later on when you've got better towers, so I'm giving it 6 out of 10 red top hats. It's still pretty good for a beginner tower. Next up, there's the golden pyromancer. It costs $800 to place with 5 DPS while having a cost efficiency of $163 per DPS, which is super expensive. I had to skip a wave to get this tower, so the first leak doesn't count. It has short range, but unlike the shotgunner, it isn't mandatory to place it in corners. This tower is able to melt defense after level 3, which is good but not useful in the early game. This tower is not really consistent for DPS. I leaked a bunch of times in the early game but decided to keep going because the enemies were pretty weak. I ended up leaking the Fallen Squire with 102 health, so this tower isn't really good DPS wise. It does however get hidden detection from level 0, which is good, while the normal pyromancer gets it after level 2. It also has lead detection, so that makes it useful for lead enemies. Because of that, this tower is used quite a lot in hardcore mode rather than in fallen mode. With that being said, I think this tower is mainly good until the heavies or Fallen Squire. For support this tower is good, but DPS wise for the early game it's not great. I have to give it 6 out of 10 red top hats, while the normal pyromancer 5 out of 10 red top hats since they're so similar. Next up, there's the golden soldier. It costs $500 to place with 3 DPS while having a cost efficiency of $147 per DPS. This tower has a lot of range, so it's usable on a lot more maps. This tower is pretty consistent for DPS. Its burst can be annoying, but it still does a good job. However, it has to be spammed. This tower tower managed to defeat the fallen squire, but leaked 2 quicks because the aggro modifier, but still kept going and ended up passing the entire early game with no further leaks. Also, just to be clear, up until wave 15 I count as early game. This tower does also get flying detection from level 0 and hidden detection from level 2. However, the normal soldier doesn't get flying detection. But because of the flying detection, this tower is very used in special game modes and hardcore. With that being said, I think this tower is pretty decent. The flying detection makes it stand out, but it does have pretty bad cost efficiency, so I'm giving it 7 out of 10 red top hats, while giving the normal soldier 5 out of 10 red top hats since it's a starter tower not very usable. Next up, there's the golden cowboy. It costs $600 to place with 2.65 DPS while having a cost efficiency of $226 per DPS. DPS and cost efficiency wise this tower sucks, but it does give you money every few shots, so this actually replaces the farm. This tower has a lot of range too, so it's usable on a lot of maps. Its DPS is also consistent but has to stop firing when gaining cash, so that can be a bit annoying, but because you need to spam this tower then that shouldn't be an issue. This tower also leaked an enemy after defeating the squire, but still kept going. I ended up beating the early game with this tower as well with no other leaks. This tower does get hidden detection at level 3 for 3.3 thousand, which is super expensive in the early game. This tower also works for special game modes but isn't good in hardcore mode. With that being said, this tower is very good in solo and duo. It's bad outside of that, so I'm giving it 8.5 out of 10 red top hats while giving the normal version 7 out of 10 red top hats. The normal version is the same thing with just less damage and less cash. Next up, there's the Gladiator. It costs $300 to place with 2 DPS while having a cost efficiency of $151 per DPS. This tower is a melee tower, so it has short range, meaning it's best to place in corners. You're also able to get 2 on the first wave. This tower is mostly consistent when you've got a few of them. It can hit up to 3 enemies per swing, so take advantage of that. I'd suggest getting level 0 first and then save up for level 4 because I'm gonna be real, the first 3 levels aren't great. This tower does have an ability which makes it swing faster, but it stalls for a few seconds, so you'll have to time it. This tower performed well until the heavies, where it kept leaking and ended up with a 222 HP fallen squire. With that being said, this tower isn't really that good anymore. It is outclassed easily by other towers, so I'm giving it 5 out of 10 red top hats. I just didn't want to spend much time on this tower since it is just so much worse than it used to be. Next up, there's the Jester. It costs $500 to place with 2.33 DPS while having a cost efficiency of $215 per DPS. This tower has good range and it throws bombs which set enemies on fire. It gets more bombs later on, but we will get back to that. This tower is best when spammed for the early game, but it did leak abnormals on the first wave and also heavies a few times. I ended up leaking the fallen squire with 102 health, so it's not too strong for a single target. This tower does get lead detection on level 0 and also hidden detection on level 3 for $3,400, which is pretty expensive. But at max level it has 4 bombs. Fire bomb, which sets enemies on fire, ice bomb, which applies the chill effect, poison bomb, which leaves puddles that deal damage in melt defense, and confusion bomb, which makes enemies go backwards. With that being said, this tower is very support focused. It is mainly good in the mid to late game and isn't great early game, so I'm giving it 6 out of 10 red top hats. It's usable, but there's better choices. Next up, there's the Brawler. This tower costs $600 to place with 10 DPS while having a cost efficiency of $60 per DPS, which is incredible. It has very short range, so place it in corners as well. This tower one-shots abnormals, so it's great for speedruns. This tower does have a placement limit of 6 though, so I'd suggest getting all level 0s first. This tower does actually knock back enemies on level 2 every third hit and deals double damage, which is also great. It also has a special reposition ability on level 4, which moves the tower and deals splash damage. This tower easily passes the fallen squire, but couldn't make it past wave 10 because it has no hidden detection. However, it does have lead detection. With that being said, I think this tower is incredible. It didn't leak once except for the hiddens, and it is extremely cost efficient, so I'm giving it 9 out of 10 red top hats. If it had hidden detection, I would give it more. Next up, there's the golden crook boss. It costs $800 to place with 4.4 DPS while having a cost efficiency of $181 per DPS. Because of that, I had to skip a wave to get this tower. This tower has a lot of range, but it does struggle by itself in the earlier waves. That's why it has units which boost its DPS and make it a lot better. This tower has a placement limit of 5, so I'd suggest get all level 0 for the unit spam. I managed to easily make it to wave 15 with this tower, it only struggled a bit in the first waves. This tower does also get flying and hidden detection on level 2, along with the normal crook boss. With that being said, I think this tower is really good. It's good early game and performs well for the entire game, so I'm giving it 8 out of 10 red top hats, and the normal version 7 out of 10 red top hats. They're both really good but a bit map reliant because of the units. Next up, there's the golden scout. It costs $250 to place with 2.5 DPS while having a cost efficiency of $100 per DPS. You can get 2 of these at the start, so that's pretty good. It also has a lot of range, so that's no worry. This tower is really consistent when you get 4 to 6 of them, and because they're so cheap, that's no problem. I'd suggest getting level 1s first and then upgrading. This tower didn't leak a single enemy, it managed to perform very well with no struggles. It managed to pass wave 15 easily as well. This tower does also get hidden detection on level 2 and lead detection on level 3. However, it's not really useful on hardcore, but it's good on special game modes. With that being said, I think this tower does the early game perfectly. It's really cheap, has good DPS and lets you farm a lot, so I'm giving it 10 out of 10 red top hats. This tower is just purely meant for the early game. Just as an honorable mention, I'll quickly talk about the engineer. She costs $750 to place with 5.5 DPS including her sentry while having a cost efficiency of $136 per DPS. She has a placement limit of 6, so you cannot spam her. She has all the detections in the game, but the sentries get hidden detection on level 5. Even though she defeated the Fallen Squire, later on she couldn't make it past the hidden enemies. And because of how expensive her upgrades are, it's not easy to get a lot of engineers upgraded for enough DPS. With that being said, I just wanted to mention that this tower is a bit usable for the early game. She may perform better on some maps than others, but I'm giving her 6 out of 10 red top hats. She works for the early game, but not for long. But the winner for me is the Golden Scout. I really like this tower because of how cheap it is, which lets you farm and get good DPS towers really early on. Its cost efficiency for DPS is also really good. You could just sell it after getting enough DPS towers without investing too much money into it. This tower just works for the early game in a lot of modes and maps, which is also why I like it. If you don't have the Golden Scout though, the Brawler is also another great option but needs support for hidden enemies. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe and feel free to leave a comment down below. My name is TZ and I thank you for watching.